get our lower end, block crank, piston drawer, and we will constantly go back and forth on this stuff to create some things here. Upper end field, cylinder head. Okay, same thing. Cylinder head can be aluminum or cast iron. Just like the block, it will contain water jackets for cooling. It also has oil return holes. Remember, we'll actually pump the oil up to the top of the engine. It'll gravity feed its way back down, so there are oil returns in it. Probably the same as the cylinders. The water jackets will surround the combustion chambers. Again, we want to generate heat, but we have to control the heat. We have to control the amount of heat. Too much heat will be very detrimental to the engine. It can get it hot enough that it can fatigue the metal. It may not melt it, but it can fatigue it. When it starts to fatigue, it starts to twist and loses its shape, especially in aluminum. Okay. Aluminum is the problem. Too hot, it will warp. So that has to be controlled. That's why the holes in the head are for the water jacket. Other than not all of it. Yeah. Right. Intake side, you have your intake ports. Okay. This flows the air in from the throttle body through the intake manifold into the head, down to the valves, and then into the combustion chamber. Probably one of the most important designs are the ports themselves. Again, back to the reference, it's an air pump. You've got to be able to move the air so that faster you can move the air in to the chamber and move it out, the better it flows. Cylinder heads have changed in design to get the flow, to shorten up the flow. One thing about air, and for all you guys that have your so-called cold air intakes on your cars, which they're probably not. Most of them are hot air intakes.
Don't get water in those. Don't get water stuff in them.
Oh yeah, that was the early thing in the late 80s, early 90s. They were learning that because they were putting the little scoops under the spoilers and then running through the puddles.
This weekend.
Yeah, you gotta be careful. Hydrolock the engine, that's all it does. It will suck that water up, fill that cylinder up with water. Remember, it is not compressible. So when that piston comes up, it's full of water, it hits the water. The weak link here is the connecting rod. It will break it or twist it like a pretzel. The face will meet the windshield because it will shut off. Yeah. But every time you airspeed, every time you bend the air 90 degrees, you slow it down about 7 miles an hour. So you change the velocity. So when you see them and they got all these bends and curves like that, right, the velocity's not there. So you actually have to increase it. Okay, depending on the tubing. You've heard the term mandrel bending. Mandrel bending doesn't put the creases in the pipe when you bend it 90 degrees. So the air will flow. Okay, so you want to maintain the flow, and in most cases you can't help but you have to bend it 90 degrees. But you want to minimize those bends. Same thing with your cylinder head. Getting the air flow in, we have to look at how it bends. This is one of the ways we used to do it. The last bend before it enters the chamber is a 90-degree bend into the chamber. That slows the air down, doesn't get there. You have to do different things with the ports. Race guys, porting and polishing the ports on the cylinder head. Everybody wants their heads ported and polished. that can actually work backwards. It can actually decrease power. Polishing is not a good thing. It makes it too slippery. Gasoline hits it, doesn't stay atomized. The gasoline hits it and actually turns back to a liquid. And it will not burn in the combustion chamber in a liquid form. It comes out as a liquid, goes in the cap, destroys the catalytic converter. Okay. In those ports, at the end of the ports, are the valves. Okay. You have an intake valve, you have an exhaust valve. Once again, the intake valve is always going to be the larger valve. The exhaust valve is going to be the smaller. Even when we get to multiple valves, the two larger valves are going to be the intake. The two smaller are going to be the exhaust valves. Okay. Again, on the other side, you have the valve spring, you have a retainer, and what we call keepers. By this being a cam and block head, we also have a rocker. We have a rocker stud, which the rocker arm goes on to, with a pivot ball. The rocker arm here actuates the valve. We'd actually started on the camshaft from the lifter, camshaft to the lifter, to the push rod, which would push on this rocker arm on the end, which would pivot on the ball onto the valve tip to open the valve. Okay? So the movement of the camshaft or the lobe on the camshaft opens the valve. Again, the valve spring is what closes it. So the amount of pressure on this spring is actually what closes the valve. Okay. From a performance standpoint, this is where you spend your money. If you want it to work better, you want it to breathe better. Breathing better means it's going to move more air. It's going to bring it in, brings it in smoothly, and puts it out smoothly. Spend your money on that cylinder head or work on the cylinder head. That's where it is. Okay. That's where the power is made. Okay. We talked about the ports, but they're cast into the head. They're a part of the casting. Okay. This side here is the exhaust. Yeah. Same thing here. This would be the exhaust side. It is part of aluminum, and then the intake ports. Intake ports sometimes will be a little bit larger.
So are they always like certainly going to be on the right hand side for the exhaust and then the left hand side for the intake, or it varies?
By probably the oddball out there, Hondas. You have to look at the engines and the way they're designed, which way they're put in the car. So no, it's not always going to be that way. Honda does have a couple of back-assward engines. But they like that. They're pretty good. Some heads have a cross-flow or a Siamese port. You look at this head here. This hole in the center here is actually a part of both the exhaust ports on this cylinder head. So this actually flows backwards from these two center exhaust valves, and at one point in time it was actually used for an EGR valve. Talk about exhaust gas circulation. So that's the way it could enter the intake manifold from that point. There. So, and again, you can look at it here, right in the center. You have exhaust on the end, and then the two exhaust ports in the center here. Biggest problem was heat. A lot of the manufacturers did this, but they had heat issues. It would coke up the oil, and it would overheat the oil in this part of the cylinder head. So you would starve your inner rock arms and valves from oil. It actually kept it a little bit too hot. So it made some changes in cooling system design and pulled off a lot of the heat from that point in the head. Yeah, you can see it there in the center. How the two exhaust valves are on that one main port in the center, or look at this one right here. Same thing. This has pretty much been done away with a lot of the engines. Can't think of who even uses it now. Okay.